Hello, all. This is the Foundations for Success podcast. I am your host, Morgan Woodington, and I am here today with Alicia Manning. So, Mrs. Manning, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. So I'm a native of Petersburg, Virginia, just south of Richmond by about 30 miles. And I have lived here in the Hampton Roads area for well over 20 years. I came here to complete my undergraduate studies. I started off going to Richard Bland College, which is a sister college of William and Mary. Got an associate's degree in economics there right out of high school, and then decided to transfer. Initially, I was thinking I'd transfer to William and Mary, but after taking a friend to tour Christopher Newport's campus, I fell in love with the quaintness of that campus and decided instead to transfer to CNU. And I finished my undergraduate degree in international culture and commerce there, and worked at CNU for a bit, and stayed in the area. And so I've done graduate studies over at Regent University, and lived in Newport News, Hampton, Virginia Beach, and now for the past 11 years, my husband and I have lived here in Toano, Virginia, which is part of James City County, just outside of Williamsburg.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I'm a student at Thomas Nelson, so I haven't really started too much of my college journey yet. I mean, Thomas Nelson is definitely a journey for sure, and it's an awesome one. But I'm going to transfer to university next semester, so Wonderful. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
I've heard that you have a tutoring business, and I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about what your business is, and just some information about the business that you have.
Yes. So just about 4 years ago, my husband and I opened a franchise, and it came at a pretty interesting time. But we opened a franchise here based out of Williamsburg, Virginia, but we service pretty much all of Hampton Roads. We service all of James City County, York County, Newport News, and surrounding areas as requested. And our company is called Club Z Tutoring and Test Prep Services, Williamsburg. And so we provide tutoring and test prep services for youth and adults of all ages, all grade levels, and in all subjects. So we can help provide support in everything from math to Mandarin, whether a student is taking a formal class or is in need of SAT or ACT prep, or they are getting ready for graduate studies, or coming out of nursing school and needing to complete an exit exam. We're there to help. And so we provide one-on-one customized tutoring services to our clients. And we find that we are typically, on average, able to help students improve 2 letter grades within the first 60 days of service. And that was prior to the pandemic. Since the pandemic, we've actually improved that a bit. It's gone up to 2 letter grades within the first 45 days of service. And so we do that because we really focus on a customized approach. So we work very intensely with making sure we have just the right tutor working with each client to affect change at the greatest level, and as quickly as possible.
That's very cool. And tutoring is something that, as a college student, I really appreciate. I go to the Thomas Nelson tutors a lot, and I know I would not make it through without the tutors. I just wouldn't. There's a lot of classes where I can maybe pass them, but I wouldn't have understood the material.
Yeah. And that's what we hear from a lot of our clients. So just helping students to build the confidence sometimes that they need to be able to have not just a familiarity with the content, but a real working knowledge and mastery of the information so that they can easily take that information and apply it in the next level of the course that they'll maybe have the following semester or next year, or on their jobs. And to make sure too that it doesn't create a level of frustration. So we find that sometimes people come to us for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes it's that they do fine in the classwork and the homework, but they freeze on test and quizzes, and they may have a level of test anxiety, or in other cases, often clients will have been told to take notes and to study, but no one has ever explicitly taught them what that looks like and what it means, especially as it pertains to their particular learning style. So all of us hold on to and absorb information a little differently. And part of what we do is to really identify the learning style for each of our clients and make sure that we present information in accordance with the learning styles that work best for each client.
That sounds like a really wonderful service.
We think so too.
It sounds very personalized for the students that go to the service, and it doesn't, I think of some tutoring, I think of just this generic cookie cutter. You go in, they show you a few problems, but it's not really tailored to you. But I like that your business sounds like you're really working with the students.
Yeah, and we find that ultimately when students feel like they have someone who's truly interested in helping them, that's just there to be present and available and supportive of them, sometimes that's half the battle right there, that they didn't have a person to ask all of their questions to, who they had immediate and ready access to. In other cases, we find that it really helps to ease a level of tension amongst family members. So sometimes it's a K-12 learner and the parent has been trying to the best of their ability to provide the insight and the support, but it may be a new kind of math or a new way that the math is being taught in the school setting. And so it's really helpful to have a tutor who can navigate that with the client and allow the parent to do the parenting and be the parent without also having to have the role of educator, especially now that parents are wearing so many different hats and being pulled in multiple directions. We find that one of the biggest things we hear within the first week or two of service, we get a call. It's often from moms or dads, and they call to just thank us because automatically it's decreased the tension in the household between the learner and the parent.
Yeah, that's very cool. I can imagine that actually makes a pretty strong connection between like the parent and the child as well, because all the stress from school is kind of resolved. Everything's going well. They can celebrate it.
Indeed.
You've actually sparked my curiosity about what types of students you get to your tutoring. And what I mean by that is, are they mainly high school students? Is it K-12, like you said, or college? Is it kind of balanced out an equal amount of all?
Oh, wow. We have such a wide breadth of clients or students. And so I'll just try to think about the ones that I've been in contact with just in the past 24-hour period. So this morning, just prior to our conversation, I was on the phone with the parent of Gabriel, who is one of our elementary school learners, and Gabriel is 5. And so his mother has been using our tutoring services for about 2 months now, I believe. And she was just sharing with me information about how well Gabriel did on a recent PALS test and how his performance has improved. And so he has a tutor who works with him about 2 to 3 times a week, and he has shorter sessions because he's 5. And so we want to make sure it's pretty customized to his attention span, but his sessions are frequent. So he has about 3 sessions each week, and they are just about 45 minutes to an hour in length. And that seems to work really well for him. And he and his tutor cover quite a bit of ground. And so that's kind of on one end of our spectrum. I think the youngest child that we have had in the past few months has really been a 4-year-old. And she was with us for the early part of the pandemic, before her school division really identified what their plan was for remote learning and virtual learning. And so we were there to really serve as a liaison and to help make sure that the child did not lose progress academically, and that actually she was able to make the transition into virtual learning and be a little bit ahead of where her peer group was. So On the other end of the spectrum, I also spoke with a client last night who called around about 7:30, and she's a former client, parent of a former client, and um, her daughter, Camille, is in need of tutoring for Algebra 2. And we previously helped Camille in Algebra 1 about a year ago. And the parents called us about 3 weeks before the end of the semester, and it wasn't pretty. The grade was not a passing grade when we first began working with Camille, and within less than 2.5 weeks, we had the grade from a F all the way to a C. She was able to finish the semester with a C, and also passed her exam. And so that was just because of how quickly we were able to start working, and how closely she was able to work with her tutor to get to the root of the issue, where there were gaps and disparities in understanding. And so now Camille is a senior in high school, and her mother has reached out to us yet again because of how effectively we were able to help her last school year. And now, in the midst of virtual learning, sometimes students do not have a love for the subject in which they have the greatest struggle. And tutors are really there to help bridge that gap. And so, we'll be connecting Camille with the tutor within the next week so that she can go ahead and get that additional support. So those are two of our K-12 tutors, or not tutors, clients that we have. We also have college students, and so 3 of our newest clients this past week are students who are seniors, or they have completed their senior year requirements and they're dually enrolled. Some of them are actually taking classes at Thomas Nelson Community College. So we have one young man, he's a student in 12th grade. He's taking some statistics courses in his local school division, and then he is also taking a few courses, I think they are calculus AB, that are at mm-hmm. And so we have been working with that young man. His name is Andrew, and so we've been working with Andrew for probably 2 years now, covering a variety of subjects, everything from German to Calc AB. So in that way, we've got a good percentage of our existing clientele definitely come from the K-12 population. But we also have students who contact us, or parents who contact us because they're students and they're in college. And as you know, college courses move at a much faster pace. And so it's easy to get behind. And if you wait too long, sometimes there's not enough time to turn the ship completely around before the course ends. And so we often have parents who initially work with us when their kids were in high school or middle school, and they reach back out to us once the students are in college as the need reoccurs. And so we do have a good number of college students, both locally, and some of them reach out to us because they find information about our services online. We provide learning online, and we'll deliver that by Zoom. Same kind of customized experience, but because of the pandemic, we're allowed to make sure that it's delivered in the healthiest of ways so that we can really, be available to clients as often and frequently as is needed, and get them the information and the support, but not have to put them at risk or our tutors at risk in the delivery process.
All right, that's very cool. It sounds like you have a very wide variety of different clients that come to you, which says a lot about your business. If you're getting people, younger kids and college students coming to the tutor service, it sounds like your services are very effective in helping those students succeed and on the career path they're trying to go. And so I know that a lot of students have challenges that they face in their everyday life. I realize that college students, as a college student, I realize a lot of college students work and they have family and other things going on, but I also know that younger kids, as you mentioned, attention span might be a challenge for them. But I'm wondering, as a tutor service, what are some of the challenges that the service faces? And I know that they may have changed a little bit since the pandemic has started. I don't know if you were always an online tutor service. Did you have in-person sessions at one time?
So that's a great question, but I want to go back to the other question because I realized that there's some caveats that I left out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So just I want to go back there because I know that I'll forget later on. So you also asked about just some of the variety of students that we work with, and one of the groups that oftentimes we hear from and we are eagerly able to provide assistance is homeschoolers. A good number of our clients are individuals who are currently enrolled in public school, private school, charter schools, and many times they're homeschool learners whose parents have a natural agility in one subject area, but not another. And so we can really help to provide the support exactly where it's needed, whether it be in one subject or across all subjects. And parents love that, and they love the fact that we don't offer a long-term contract, so it's easy for them to start services, and then once the mission is accomplished or they feel like they're at a good place, if they want to reduce the level of support or end with services for that time, they certainly can. And there are no balloon fees or back-end fees to get out of that. That flexibility is part of what makes it so attractive for new clients to come in our direction. And the last group of individuals that I will talk about, because I often, these are individuals that call us frequently, but it's probably not a group that everyone would immediately think of. And these are retirees. We have a growing number of individuals who have always wanted to learn a second language, or they always wanted to be able to be a bit more skilled in a particular area, or they're getting ready to travel and they want to make sure that their Italian or their French is up to par. And so we are there to help, and we can provide that customized learning for new clients. And then the very last group, individuals sometimes struggle with absorbing new information because they often may have a learning challenge. And we work with all kinds of learners, whether learning comes easy and perhaps they're a gifted learner and they learn really quickly, or if they really struggle and they've always had an issue with dyslexia or some other kind of learning challenge that makes it a little bit more difficult for them to quickly hold on and attain mastery. And so whether a student has an IEP or is receiving special education services, or like I said, they're on a homeschool track or they're taking dually enrolled courses, it doesn't matter. We can assist regardless of where people are on that continuum of education. So thank you for letting me finish answering the former question.
Absolutely.
And then repeat for me, if you will, the more recent question that you shared.
Okay, sorry, I have to think for a second. I think what I was asking was about some of the challenges that y'all face as a service. Like, what are some of the difficulties that the service faces, particularly during the time of this pandemic?
So I think the pandemic has actually reduced the challenge that we have.
Okay.
It really has. So prior to the pandemic, we provided in-home tutoring services and online. So we've always offered online tutoring, but I'd say probably only about 5% of our client base requested it. And they were usually students who were college students or grad students, or maybe they were here for a period of the year, or some of them were military families that had just transitioned into the area and they needed help for a specific period of time. And so they were a little bit more interested in online learning. Or sometimes they were executives who were traveling and who needed to learn a language, or they needed help in a particular area. But because of their demands for work, it was best to have online learning. The other 95% of our client base really wanted in-home tutoring, and that's what we have been known for. it allows our tutors to go to the home or a local library. Those are usually the two options that we'll go with, and deliver in-home, one-on-one, customized tutoring services or test prep services. And so we deliver, our tutors are available 7 days a week. And we deliver tutoring sessions between the times of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And so prior to the pandemic, our tutors were physically getting in their vehicles, traveling to a specific destination, usually the home of the client, and working with the client in their home for 1 to 3 hours and then leaving. Whether it was to do that once a week or make that trip 2 or 3 times a week. And so in that way, it required that we have a really high number of tutors all across the Hampton Roads area, and tutors who had different levels of availability, flexibility in their scheduling, but all who had the ability to travel, to drive their own vehicle to that destination. And so the cool thing about the pandemic, in a very twisted kind of way, has been that now with all of our delivery being online, tutors no longer have to deal with the time, energy, or travel, the gas, none of that. They can simply log into Zoom and get ready to deliver sessions to their students. So what that has created is a scenario where tutors actually now have more time. If a tutor was available for maybe like 4 to 7 p.m. on a Monday afternoon, now they may work with 2 or 3 clients in that one time slot, whereas before they may have just worked with one student because of the travel time on either side of the delivery session. And so our tutors in that regard really enjoy the fact that they're able to work with a greater number of students overall. I'd say in terms of challenges, the biggest challenge that we have now is that there are so many additional folks that have entered the market of tutoring and test prep, and many of those individuals or companies are ill qualified to really be in the market and to do good on the behalf of the client. And that's not always an easy thing for the average client to ascertain before they've spent their money. And so oftentimes what we find is that individuals will reach out to us and they have had a pretty traumatic experience with another company, and they got into some kind of a long-term contract, or that company was delivering tutoring support, but it really wasn't specific to what the student was learning and what the student was dealing with in that class. And worse yet, sometimes they've worked with a tutor who could only do more tutoring and not really pre-teaching or outright instruction. And so the tutor largely depended in some of those not so great scenarios, the tutor largely depended on what that classroom instructor was doing. And as you and I know, classroom instructors are really stretched, and so much is being asked of them right now, given the pandemic and the switch to virtual learning. And so it provides an even greater need for why that one-on-one customized tutoring support that we offer works so well, and why it's so needed right now.
Yeah, for sure. I really agree about the professors being kind of stretched out and overloaded with all the students and technology and everything that's going on right now. And I kind of find that even though it's good, and I agree that students should take their problems to the professor, like their homework problems, to try to figure out how to solve them. At the same time, you can only show them a few of them, whereas with the tutor, you can bring them, a whole book full of stuff you need help with.
Exactly.
And do a couple sessions and you can get through all of that material.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that we find is oftentimes when individuals first approach us, they know that things are not going well, but they have not been able to correctly tease out the why. And so when we first have our consultation with clients or prospective clients, it's a free consult. So we do a free consultation with the parent and the student to really hone in on what is happening and what's not happening, where the support is needed. And sometimes it's something as simple as the student really doesn't understand how to take notes, or the predominant style of instructional delivery for their teacher or their professor is not how that child best learns or how that student best learns. So sometimes if we have a professor or a teacher who loves to lecture per se, but we have a student who's not an auditory learner, they're a visual learner, then something like a podcast or a lecture isn't the best way to make sure that they understand the information. And so what our tutors can do is really kind of spoon feed that content to the student in the ways that that person or student learns best, to make sure that they attain mastery. And so one of the greatest challenges that we have usually at the onset is helping parents to identify where the problem or the disconnect is really happening. And unfortunately, right now, because of the pandemic and the switch that so many school divisions have had to make to virtual learning, a lot of parents kind of lump online learning, virtual learning, and anything on the computer or associated with screen time. They kind of put that all in one bucket. And while it does have certain similarities, it is not the same. And so oftentimes parents who really would prefer for an in-home tutor, a person to be there face-to-face with their student in their home, can be a little dismayed or put off if they hear about online learning because they lump it together. And some of the inherent differences with the kind of virtual learning experience that students are experiencing right now with their schools is that they are one of maybe 20 or 35 students that one instructor or at best two are working with to provide information to that whole group at one time, and usually within like a 30-45 minute slot, right? And so that instructor or that teacher is really tasked with trying to do their best to make sure that as many of the folks in the group get the bulk of that information. That doesn't allow for much customization, and that's where we can really come in. So our approach, although we do deliver services online, it's not that kind of whole bucket approach. We really look at what works best for this particular learner, and let's start there. And so if that student is a visual learner, then we're going to incorporate things to make sure that we present the content visually. If they're more of an auditory learner, then we'll go through the repetition of the steps that need to be completed. And we also make sure that our tutors spend adequate time going back to look at the prerequisite knowledge. Oftentimes students are struggling in a class like, let's say, Algebra 2 with trigonometry, because they don't remember what they learned back in Algebra 1. So if they had geometry the year between the two algebras, it's all a wash now, and they feel like they've kind of got to start afresh. And so one of the great things about our Club Z tutoring service is that our tutors get in there, and if reteaching is what's needed, that's what we provide. And so oftentimes we need to go back and reteach content that the student had earlier, let's say this school year, while we help them also continue to keep their head above water with incoming classwork and homework assignments. We go back and reteach from the beginning of the school year the content that's already been presented to make sure that they know it. They know that content inside and out. And if there are disconnects with prerequisite learning, that we go back in and we figure it out. So that those things don't reoccur later on in the learning process.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that, because I'll tell you, one of my struggles, I'm up towards doing physics classes at this point. I'm in a physics class, and I still struggle with some of the basic math concepts. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I pull out my calculator just to do some of the basic math. And that's stuff that I know now that's what I need to focus on. But if you asked me 3 semesters ago what my problem was and what I needed to focus on to study better, I couldn't have told you what. So I think it sounds like tutors are doing really well to bridge that gap for students and help them figure out what they need to improve on and focus on to do better on their work.
Yeah, it's really a crucial component. And we find that often our clients call us back and they want the same tutor. Like they want the same tutor because they've established such great rapport and a great connection with that individual. And so they want that tutor. But some of the clients that we've had for 3 and 4 years understand that regardless of the subject where they need the support, they can count on us to choose the right person for them. And we do that because we really spend some time in that consultation getting to know our client, right? And I insist that the parent or the guardian is there as well as the student, because sometimes part of the disconnect is what's being said. And so oftentimes the parent sees the problem one way, but when we talk to the student, they see the problem a little differently. And all of that information is very, very important in us understanding what's needed and how and the priority of what's needed too. And so ultimately, we want to make sure that we can present information to the student in a way that they start to gain confidence and get a few wins under their belt, so that we can address things like test taking, anxiety, and teach them some strategies for how to prepare better for a test and how to look at their notes in preparation for a test and how to study. And so many times what we find is that it comes down to the little foxes. There are little things that we think students know that they really don't know. They've never been taught how to take notes. And interestingly, in our consultation, some of the things that we inquire about to really hone in on what's needed, individuals who are left-handed take in information a little differently, and often have different note-taking preferences than those of us who are right-handed. And so all of that plays into it. So we ask questions to ascertain the learning style and some of the preferences. And oftentimes students will tell us that they are not connecting with their teacher or their professor. And so they have kind of tuned out because something else has happened that's impacted that relationship. And so working with that tutor one-on-one affords us a greater opportunity to get some momentum and then really maximize it.
That's great. I'm falling in love with your service and just the way that you're presenting it to me right now. And the reason is it sounds so personalized, like it really is tailored to each student that you're having in your service. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you search and you find some of the other services on the internet, what I tend to see is just kind of the service that's like, hey, here's the problem, here's the answer, but we're not really going to show you everything in between to get to that answer. Yeah. And I think that really encourages students to just kind of not learn and absorb the information, but just find the answer for the information and run with that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really important to us that we know our clients, but that the connection happens. And so one of the things that we afford all of our clients is the opportunity to switch a tutor. It rarely happens. I will tell you, last year, we had 116 tutors across our Hampton Roads base, and we had 3 requests to change a tutor. And of those 3 requests, all of calendar year 2020, 2 of those requests came from the same parent. So we try to get it right the first time. We really work on understanding not just the personality style, but also the learning style. And then a little bit about that parent, guardian, parent-child dynamic. Some of our students too have come to us because they're under the umbrella of the Department of Social Services. So sometimes we have worked very intensely with social workers or caseworkers or foster care parents to make sure that students get that additional support academically. And one of the things that we see is that when kids feel good, when students and learners feel really good about their work and their ability to do well and learn and understand and apply that knowledge, it has such a positive effect on everything else. And oftentimes it can help better push through some of those challenges on the home front. and help students re-engage in the learning process and feel better about their work as they cultivate a better work ethic. So we spend a lot of time listening to the student primarily and predominantly. In fact, in our consultation, we start typically by asking the student a few questions or interviewing the student. And I ask the parents to be there, be present, but to also be quiet because so often we as parents, and I'm a parent, my husband and I parented 8 children. And so as parents, sometimes we think we know what the problem is, and oftentimes we do, but sometimes it still really behooves us to listen, to hear what is happening or the problem as it's defined by the student. And just by that process of listening, we can really affirm and empower our kids to do a little bit better and to make sure that they feel heard and understood. And so, given my background and experience working in area school divisions and as a therapeutic foster parent, it really has afforded me an opportunity and an ear to listen very closely to what is being said and also what's not being said.
That's great. I mean, it really does sound like this is very, very helpful to students. That's something that people definitely need in academics. They need a helping hand sometimes. I'm so glad that y'all are there to offer that to other students. Well, I've heard that y'all have donated to Thomas Nelson previously, and I've actually heard that you have done it again this year to the college. Well, donated.
Yes.
So we really appreciate that. I wanted to thank you for the donation. And I'd like to ask you if there's anything else you would like to mention about your business or anything else you'd like to talk about before I wrap up our podcast.
I just think it's really helpful for us all to think about how helping learners develop the kind of work ethic and study skills, time management and organization skills, helping learners develop those things at a young age is so beneficial to the work that they do and to the stress level that they have as they progress, not just K-12, but also once they enter college and ultimately into the workforce and even into graduate studies and whatnot. And so I say that because we often find that many times parents will call us really late in the process or after they've tried to exhaust all other options. And that's not all parents, but oftentimes we see that the case. And one of the things that I'd really like to see happen more often than not is that we begin to look at tutoring as a preventative method, not just a reactive option for us to employ once our students have a D or on the verge of an F, but to use it on the front end. So whether it's making sure that students still have some kind of an academic structure over the course of the summer, from June through August, where they can not have the typical summer slide and loss of information, but really use those 3 months where students may have a couple of sessions a week so that they can get ready for courses that are coming their way the upcoming year, or get stronger in a foreign language, or learn something new, or practice some of those study skills and organization skills in preparation for the oncoming school year. Those are opportunities that I see many parents taking advantage of, and I'd really like to see that happen more often than not. And the other thing too is making sure that folks know that we offer flexibility, and the flexibility that we offer is largely rooted in the quality of the instruction that we provide. So all of our tutors have a requirement where they have to have no less than a 4-year college degree. They have to have no less than a 4-year college degree and at least 2 years of tutoring or teaching experience. And so you and I, and I'm sure many others, have had the opportunity of being in a class or some kind of a conference where the teacher, the professor, or the instructor knew the content, they knew their information, but they didn't have a clue as to how to teach it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, that same scenario plays out in K-12 learning environments, and also in collegiate environments. And that's where we can really help to make sure that students of all ages and all grade levels, that they understand what's coming in their direction and that they know how to be able to work through it. And that ability to hear, receive content, and learn it, even when it's not presented by someone who has the gift of teaching, if you will, that's something that it's beneficial for all learners to have under their belts. And so, yeah, we really look to have just the right kinds of tutors. And so many of our tutors are retired teachers. And so we constantly are recruiting and hiring. And if individuals are interested in reaching out or applying to serve as a tutor, we definitely encourage them to go to our website at www.clubztutoring.com/Williamsburg. And they can go straight to that website and click on the tab to become a tutor, input their preliminary information, and then we can reach out to them to schedule a phone interview. We go through a pretty rigorous process, and I'd say only about 2 out of every 10 applicants are hired on, because we have really high expectations, not just in terms of the educational backgrounds of our tutors, but we also want to make sure that they can meet the learners where they are, that the burden of learning is not exclusively on the learner, but that they can have the agility and the master teaching skills to be able to make it plain, regardless of the learner's predominant learning style. And so because of that, a good number of our teachers and tutors are retired teachers. Some of them are currently teachers in area school divisions or with private schools or sometimes online school platforms. And being able to work as a tutor, they love this because they can just focus on the teaching. They can just focus on their work with the student. There's not a bunch of paperwork involved. And all of our tutors love being able to see the light bulb go off and really seeing the growth that's happening as they turn the ship around with their students. And so we're constantly hiring, and we do have a pretty rigorous process for onboarding new tutors. And so if individuals are interested, again, that website is www.clubztutoring.com/Williamsburg. And you can click the Become a Tutor tab. Aside from that, I think it would be helpful just for parents and social workers, caseworkers, foster care parents, guidance counselors, and principals to know that they can all find out information about Club Z tutoring and test prep services by going to the same website or by giving us a call. And so our local number is area code 757-612-4689. Again, that's 757-612-4689. And we have representatives that are available 24/7 on the website to do live chat, and you can call our offices. And we typically have tutors in place within 1 to 2 weeks of that very first phone call. So we are here to help, and we can help across the board. And so we look forward to being able to work with a broader number of students here in the Hampton Roads and surrounding areas.
All right. It sounds like everybody in your business is very passionate about teaching students. And thank you so much for sharing that information about your services.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you, Morgan, for having us participate in today's podcast.
Yeah, no problem. I really appreciate you came on to tell us about the service. And I'm going to wrap up our podcast now, unless you have anything else to add.
No.
All right. Well, thank y'all for tuning in to the Foundations for Success podcast.
Thank you.